Welcome to Outsider Gaming. I'm your host today, Paul, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by the wonderful Brandon Da Silva. Brandon is the founder and SEO of ArenaX Labs. He has a focus on AI and learning and also kind of education of AI. His company, ArenaX Labs, has a flagship game out, which is called AI Arena. Very, getting Arena X and AI Arena confusing, but there you go. So the game to remember is AI Arena, and today we're going to talk all about it. And in Brandon's own words, he makes cool things with code. So welcome, Brandon. How are you today?
I appreciate it. Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
Awesome, awesome. So I had a quick kind of snoop about you, and you know, the stepping stones. How do you go from kind of a background in investments
Yeah.
and kind of investment analysis to founding your own company and making your own games? How does that happen?
Yeah, it's a bit long-winded, but I'll try and like make it as sort of concise as possible. Basically, at the fund, I was leading machine learning research there. So
Yeah.
building systematic trading strategies using machine learning. But actually, when I would create new algorithms, I would actually test them on games first before testing them on the markets. As
Hmm.
weird as that sounds, it's just because it's actually easier to apply some of this stuff to games. So if it didn't at least work on a game, there was no way it was going to work on the markets. So that was kind of like how I started getting into applying machine learning to games. And it was a lot more fun too.
Yeah.
So I would kind of start there, and then the games I was applying it to was getting a little too easy for me. So I actually started building my own gaming environments, to like new, like challenging game environments to test machine learning algorithms on. And so I started getting familiar with building games. It was on a much smaller scale than AI Arena, but I was getting familiar with building these game environments to basically test agents on. So that's kind of how it started and how I started really liking applying machine learning to gaming. And then over time, I've developed a real passion for basically teaching people about machine learning. It
Hmm.
started off with just what I thought was cool presentations, and then it morphed into interactive visuals online. And then the extension of that is basically gaming, right? Where the idea is you want to abstract more and more and more away a lot of the complexity, and the best medium, in my opinion, is a game. So that's
Gotcha.
kind of the progression there. And so then, yeah, there's a few other things, but that's kind of like the main progression in terms of why I decided to leave and ultimately build this thing.
Amazing. Very good. And so then obviously the game itself, AI Arena, eh, it's a hard thing for normal people to understand. Like it's a game, but it's not really a game. Well, it is a game, but you're teaching rather than
Yeah,
fighting yourself, you're teaching an NPC to fight, and you're kind of training that NPC. It
yeah,
sounds a bit like a cross between like Robot Wars and Super Smash Bros. Or something, where you're
yeah.
trying to make the ultimate fighter, but you don't kind of get to physically do it. You get to teach. Um, so where did that idea just came from? Kind of the natural progression from machine learning into the gaming you were already doing. I'm guessing. I'm guessing you're a Super Smash Bros. Fan for sure. Anyway,
For sure, for sure. One of my favorite games of all time. Um,
brilliant.
yeah, yeah, I've been playing it since I was a kid. But okay, so the idea was actually I wanted to make a competition for machine learning models, right?
Okay.
And basically have a leaderboard to rank like all these different models. I can get into why later I wanted to do this, but I wanted to have a machine learning competition, and I wanted to be really fun. But in order for someone to say that their machine learning algorithm was better than the other, we needed a clean way to do that. And
Hmm.
what cleaner way than a PvP competition? They're literally battling. The one that wins more often than not is probably the better machine learning model. And so we wanted basically a medium to apply this to. There's a lot of different ones, but like you mentioned, I'm a Smash fan. I love platform fighting games, and so
Yeah.
that's kind of why we decided to apply it there. Now, you're right that it's a little unintuitive, right? Like a lot of people actually, when they start playing our game, when they pick it up for the first time, they're like, "What the heck? I'm not controlling it."
Yeah.
And it's this initial like reaction. It's like this is not what I'm used to. But as they get more and more into it, they're like, oh wow, this is like actually really cool because what happens is you almost build this like parent-child bond with this thing. As weird
Yeah,
as that sounds, it's very true. And then you get attached to it because you can imagine you impart 10, 100 hours into this thing, really
yeah.
like molding it, and it's like behaving like you, right? It's like a
Mm.
digital representation of yourself, and you see it like win a match. The dopamine hit is kind of unmatched. So yeah, the concept initially seems strange, but over time we hope that this is just an accepted genre in gaming.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I've seen from your videos there's kind of like three stages or three steps to, starting with your character and teaching. So there's kind of like the putting the data in, then there's the teaching training bit, and then there's the letting it play out and see what
Hmm.
happens. So, I mean, is that easy to pick up for new users, or how is it a little off-putting? As you said, that they want to go in and play a game, and then all of a sudden it's
Mm.
like, no, no, you're here to teach.
Yeah.
What's it like for new players or against experienced players, I suppose?
Yeah, so I would say there is a little friction at the moment, if I'm being completely honest. We are actively working on reducing that friction as much as possible. I would say the first part, which is data collection, where you're showing it what to do, that's intuitive to people, right? They're used to
Yeah.
playing games, and the way you show your AI is actually to play the game, right? If you wanted to do a specific combo, you have to show it how to do that
Mm.
combo. That part's intuitive. The next part is a bit less intuitive because what's happening in the background is you're collecting all this data. The next part is how do you configure this data, right?
Mhm.
So, for example, they're presented with these toggles, like maybe I want it to learn more or less, right? That's like one decision they have to make. Another one is a toggle for like removing like idle actions, right? It's like all this stuff that they're not really used to. And of course, we can abstract that away and not present it to the user, but I don't know if I mentioned already, but one of our goals is to educate people on machine learning. And so if we make this just a mechanic of the game, um, what we found is that people actually start like subconsciously learning about machine learning, which is cool.
Mm.
But that presents a problem in that when they're like presented with all this information of decisions they need to make, it's like overwhelming.
Yeah.
So we're working through what we think is a clever in-game tutorial to build up to that point. But I would say that's the toughest thing is like understanding how to configure your AI once you collect the data.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I've seen like a couple of videos where something that kind of, just jumping off the side and trying to get back to the platform and stuff like that, and then trying to figure
Mm.
out what are the key moments you should be teaching. And
Yeah,
so it's not collecting all that data where it ends up not
exactly.
understanding what to do. Um,
Absolutely.
so it's very intricate for geeks like me. I kind of love
Yeah,
that stuff. So as you said, it's nearly a competitive thing. You want to make the best Frankenstein's monster, and you want to be able to beat everyone else.
exactly.
So makes absolute
Absolutely.
sense. Um, like AI is such a buzzword these days, especially Chat GPT, I think, is kind of and Mid
Mhm.
Journey and those sorts of things. They're all slowly creeping into our world and taking over a
Yeah.
little bit. Not in a bad way. It depends. Like, what are the good things about this? What's this machine learning? Is it making people more creative? Are you finding you're getting more, more users, or you're able to get more ideas because there's so many people feeding into, the one
Mm.
game?
Um, but would you be able to expand on that a little, just so I really
Sure.
understand? Don't want to take it into
So
like a weird tangent.
yeah, like for example, if you make a normal game, you put it out there and people play it and they experience it, and
Yeah.
it's very much yours.
Yeah.
You've controlled the narrative, you've controlled the gameplay mechanics and stuff like that. Whereas
Yeah.
you've kind of given everyone the tools here to do their own thing and
Yeah.
have their own experiences and make their own mechanics in a way,
Yeah.
confined by the fight arena. Are you finding that you're seeing all these new and interesting ideas and things being pumped in? Like, is that a positive? With
Yeah.
the AI
Yeah.
machine learning. Yeah,
Yeah. 100%. And that was why we designed it the way we did. So, like you mentioned, like a lot of games will create a box for,
mm,
let's call it the NPCs to operate in, right? And
yeah,
it cannot break out of that box. What we wanted to do is provide ultimate flexibility, right? Now, this
yeah,
has its pros and cons. The pro is that we can see insanely creative things that people are able to teach their AI how to do. The con is that if they suck at the game, their AI is also going to suck, right? Which a lot of games, what they'll do is they'll provide guardrails, right? And they'll say it can
Yeah,
only get this bad. But from our point of view, like we don't want to provide those guardrails because if we do it on the lower end, we're obviously going to have to do it on the upper end. It's impossible to basically provide guardrails on one end
yeah,
and not the other. And so we wanted this to really be as expressive a game as possible. So yeah, we literally allow the machine to learn anything that the user shows it.
very good, very good. And yeah, I suppose if you're to put a cap anywhere, or as you said, guardrails, you're not going to get the truly creative people. You're not going to break the mold as
Exactly.
such if there's rules in place. And is there any other aspects of kind of AI? I mean, as I said, it's very much a buzzword these days with Chat
Hmm.
GPT. Is there anything else in your game or anything you're thinking about doing
Mm,
in terms of AI? So,
maybe.
for example, there I'll give you my example. So there's a lot of modders out there, and recently, like I mean, Skyrim gets modded to death.
Mm,
But what they've started to do is they've started to use Chat GPT to fill in the role of some NPCs. So when you go and ask them a question,
mm,
it's like speech to text or text to
mm,
speech, and you get a response. But the response is, it's
yeah.
basically GPT playing the role of that NPC. So
Yeah, yeah.
they're able to answer. Well, supposedly they're able to answer loads of questions and things like that. I know your game is completely focused on fighting and fighting mechanics, but
Yeah.
would you ever? Does that stuff excite you? Do you think there's any room for more things like that in
Mm.
the industry?
Um, so I'm probably gonna have a take that's different than most people. So
Good.
we don't use ChatGPT, we don't use
Yep.
Midjourney, we don't use a lot of these generative AI tools. If I'm being honest, they don't excite me because it's so saturated and everyone's doing it. I
Yeah.
do truly like working on things that no one else is working on. It's very exciting when you struggle through something that isn't solved yet, and then eventually you solve it, you know? So yeah, so we don't use any of those. We use our own stuff. We do use machine learning in other ways, specifically in the development process. So, for example, one challenge that we had was attaching like hurt boxes to all the fighters in every single possible animation for every frame. So we tried a bunch of like more traditional ways and it worked. It didn't really work when like sort of like the wrists were like bending certain ways. We couldn't attach it to a specific bone. So we created a machine learning algorithm to basically learn how to do
Wow.
it for us. So it sped up like it sped up like development time specifically in creating hurt boxes like so much. So stuff like that will do for to like gain efficiency, but in terms of the core mechanics in our game, it's only the imitation learning component for now.
Gotcha. Very good. Very good. Very much you seem to be focused on educating and educate using games as tools to kind of teach people different things, AI and machine learning and stuff like that. So how do you strike the balance then between keeping it addictive and fun and also making sure that people are enjoying that they're learning at the same time?
Yeah, we almost have to not put learning as like it's almost like they shouldn't think they're learning, if you know
Yeah,
what I mean. Like they should just think they're playing a game. And the learning happens subconsciously when they have to learn something in order to break through to the next level, right? So
gotcha.
like I really like framing it as this is just a new game mechanic, right? Like
Mm,
people learn the
yeah,
craziest game mechanics, right? And the most in-depth and complex game mechanics because they enjoy the game and they want to level up and be better than their friend. And if we just present it and wrap it in that way, then it's not really learning, right? They're just playing a game. They're trying to get better at this game. And what ends up happening is they start learning about machine learning, like
yeah.
subconsciously. Yeah, that's the ultimate goal.
Love it. And do you get a lot of feedback? Do you get people saying, "Wow, all of a sudden, like, I've sunk 100 hours into this thing, and I absolutely adore it. It's addictive."
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually like we have stats on this, but there's this like it's a huge step function. Like once people submit like sink a few hours into it, like their like retention is like it like skyrockets because they understand the game and they're seeing results. It's once you start seeing those results that you get like really hooked.
Yeah,
And like when we were looking at the stats, it was like honestly baffling us. We're like why are people playing so much? Like literally, like they spend so many hours every single day playing. And then we started to like just look at like the Discord, look at the chats, and see what they're saying, and it started to make sense to us as to why this was happening. And it's actually because they don't have control over their AI, which I'm happy to get into if you want, but that's actually
Yeah.
the core reason why.
Well, it sounds like you're almost building a community there, especially if
Oh
they're
yeah.
kind of chatting on Discord. So yeah, tell me a bit about that. Like, how are they finding it? Do you find there's people like giving advice to other people, and there's the
Yeah.
different threads to, oh, maybe try this, maybe try this.
Yeah, absolutely, and I feel like that's actually a really strong aspect of our game is the community and like team building experience. So we're trying to play into that a little more, um, especially now where we don't have very solid in-game tutorials in place because like we're kind of like building in the open, right? Like
Yeah,
people know we're still in development, but we want people to play test, play our game, and give us feedback because that feedback's super valuable. So in the meantime, we have these call it like superstars in our community that are just absolutely incredible at the
crushing
game.
it. Yeah.
They're crushing it. And so when new people come in, they're constantly giving them tips. New people are like, I can't figure this out. And they're like, hey, here, try this out. And sometimes they'll go like on a video call just to like walk them through it as well. Like we have like an awesome community.
Very good. Sounds amazing.
Yeah.